You need to wear a lot of hats as a writer, and you need to be an expert in a lot of fields to be able to make your story real and authentic. If you're writing a sci-fi and the technology isn't at least somewhat plausible, it's going to take people out of it. If you're writing a period piece and you have technology in there that wasn't invented until like 30 years later, you will lose people. In this video, we'll be going over authenticity and realism in writing and how important it is to keep your reader grounded. Imagine you're watching a movie or reading a book about the military, but they're calling guns by the wrong name, they're getting the calibers wrong, and they're getting the detachments and unit sizes all messed up. Even if the story is great otherwise, anybody that's got a cursory amount of knowledge in that topic will start to get increasingly more frustrated as time goes on, and it will ruin their immersion. What if you have a fantasy and in the big final battle, the characters are swinging their swords around like baseball bats or some kind of club? It's actually better to gloss over stuff and give it a little bit of a hand wave than it is to get it noticeably wrong. Key stress on the word noticeably there. If you take a couple artistic liberties, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing it in a way that is just so egregiously ham-fisted, you're taking everybody out of it. So you want to avoid that. If you choose between ham-fisting it and glossing over, you're safer to gloss over. But if you keep doing that over and over again, the person that is watching or reading isn't going to be as grounded in the world. There's not going to be as much substance, and there's not going to be as much depth to grab hold of them. Having true knowledge about what you're writing about will give you more authenticity and realism, and it will let you be more fantastical with other elements. In fantasy, have your characters sharpen and oil their swords. Have them wax their arrowheads. Waxing an arrowhead actually makes it penetrate up to twice as deep, even through a gambeson, a brigand, or chainmail, if it's able to get through the chainmail. On the topic of chainmail, don't treat your armor like thin sheets of tin that's easily broken or torn through. Chainmail, for staying on that example, very good for protecting against slashes and whatnot. Pierces can slip into the actual ring and shred it apart and get through. That is totally realistic. Arrows do that. Not all the time per se, depends on how it hits, of course, but it's very reasonable to expect that. But if somebody's in plate, the term bulletproof comes from when guns got more common and blacksmiths would finish an armor set and they would shoot the armor and make a dent from a bullet in it to prove that the armor was tough enough. Odds are somebody swinging a sword or thrusting a sword isn't going to be stronger or have better penetrating power than an actual piece of plate armor. You can slip through gaps and stuff. That is tough, though. That's not like an easy thing to do. It's a challenge. They were basically walking tanks on the battlefield. Not unbeatable, but definitely difficult. If you want somebody to beat a knight with relative ease, you're going to want them to have some kind of blunt weapon, because the crushing did really deliver force into the actual person inside if it was a clean enough hit. If your archer is a hunter, he probably uses a broadhead arrow. If your archer is a soldier, on the other hand, there's a good chance he uses something more like a bodkin, which looks like a little tiny dagger tip or a spear tip on the end of the arrow. Not always in all periods, but for a lot of medieval times, that's how it was. That right there is a good example of characterization too. It's like a little bit of free world building that tells you who the character is. If somebody sees an archer and looks at his arrows as he's practicing at the range and he sees what the tips look like, that can give him a little bit of information on the type of archer he's dealing with and the type of person that he's dealing with. And coming back to the modern world, if you have a hacking scene, you're not going to find much mileage these days with having the person clack away at the keyboard with heavy hands, use some throwaway line about a firewall, and say that they're allocating 2 gigabytes of RAM to it. People, even if they don't know how to hack, they know enough to know that that kind of stuff is very, I don't know anything about hacking, but I'm going to use these words because that's how they were used in the 90s for hacking scenes. If you're gonna, you don't have to be a PhD in any topic you're writing about, but you do want to have some, or at least enough, genuine knowledge that enriches your world and your story. Your audience is here in good faith, and they're trusting you with what little free time they have. If you're actively don't know what you're doing and you're just bumbling around and you haven't done your basic due diligence, you're basically punching them in the nuts over and over again, and eventually they'll just leave. Your audience is looking to be entertained and immersed. You need to understand how and why things are the way they are, and to a degree, you got to make it feel like it's real life for your characters. If your character is a scientist or a psychologist, they need to sound like they know what they're talking about. If they don't, and somebody has any level of understanding on the topic, they will notice. And that is going to be a bad thing unless the point of that character is that they secretly don't know what they're talking about. Maybe they are some sort of imposter posing as a scientist or something, or if it's a murder mystery, they're the killer and they're just posing as a scientist in a lab. A quick note for guns, a lot of people underestimate the strength of them, but if somebody's hiding behind a plaster wall or even a few of them, and your character shoots through the wall, it will hit the person unless they actually miss. It will penetrate through multiple walls. And anybody who has a decent understanding of guns will know that won't be your whole audience, of course, but your audience will still contain those people that know. You can just, like I said before, hand wave it and make things be a little bit how you need them to be for the sake of it, but you're going to want to really, really, really minimize that. And if possible, not force things at all. You want to genuinely be in line with the real world as much as possible. No matter what your genre is, it is really important that you actually do your research. Go online, read some studies or papers, watch some videos, get familiar with it. Like I said, you don't have to be an expert, not like a total expert, but you do have to have a good enough understanding that you can deliver the authenticity that an audience craves. That's all I have for today. Just make sure you ground your story, make it real, and then after that, take all the artistic liberties you want. It's about having that foundation to give you your jumping off point to be more on the wacky side with other things. As always, make sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know what to cover next. Give me any questions you got.